Kenya has been subjected to a long history of murder and violence at the hands of bandits, terrorists, and extremists. For over 2 decades now, Kenya has endured immense vulnerability owing to the collapse of the Somali government in 1991. This led to civil war in that country and provided space for bandits to roam the entire region at will. This space became ideal for terrorists to train and plan far-reaching attacks in the region, continent, and even abroad. From Somalia, they inflicted murder and mayhem with impunity everywhere they went. Kenya has by far borne the brunt of these terrorist acts. In August of 1998, 200 Kenyans were murdered by terrorists when they detonated a bomb at the US Embassy in Nairobi. In November of 2002, terrorists once again struck in Kikambala, Kilifi County, claiming over a dozen lives. Since then, a spate of attacks and abductions threatened our people and the economy, violated our territorial integrity, and insulted our sovereignty. More recently, there has been a series of terror attacks culminating in the violence and murder at the Westgate Mall in September last year, and the murders once again early this morning in Mandera. These terrorist attacks in Kenya have so far claimed the lives of more than 500 civilians and 300 security officers. After decades of horror, fear, outrage, and frustration, we resolved as a nation to protect our sovereignty by pursuing our enemies beyond our borders into Somalia. By mid-2011, it had become abundantly clear that our long border with an ungoverned territory, teeming with violent criminals, was a threat to our national stability. Joining military efforts to bring peace to Somalia was the inevitable answer to our terror and security threats. In October 2011, the government authorized the KDF to pursue Al-Shabaab militia into Somalia. This decision was right then and remains so today. Following requests by regional, continental, and global actors, KDF joined AMISOM in February 2012. To date, we remain part of the African Union mission. The incursion in Somalia has been largely successful. Al-Shabaab is depleted and on the retreat. However, even in its diminished state, it remains a threat to our nation. In desperation, Al-Shabaab formally affiliated itself in 2012 to Al-Qaeda, the international terrorist group. This way, they secured resources and the ability to infiltrate civilian populations and recruit, then radicalize Kenyan youth to execute attacks within our communities. This is why we have witnessed intensified extremist rhetoric against the KDF campaign in Somalia, as well as support for murder and impunity. This reprehensible rhetoric has embraced Al-Qaeda's extremist ideas of setting up an Islamic caliphate in Eastern Africa. Places of worship have become fertile places for recruitment, and several mosques have been in the past taken over by radicalized terrorist sympathizers and accomplices. Dear Kenyans, all recent attacks bear the terrorist signature. Last week's bus attack was accompanied by the same typical terrorist rhetoric. few months ago, the attack in Lamu, bearing the same hallmarks. And last night, a terrorist attack that would have wrought unspeakable devastation was successfully repulsed in Wajir. And early this morning, the attack in Mandera left 36 Kenyans dead. These attacks follow a pattern identical to the attacks on Christians in Lamu, the sporadic attacks in Mombasa, Kwale, Garissa, and Tana River. The obvious intent is to create hostility and suspicion across ethnic and religious lines, and to drive non-Muslims from certain parts of this country. The ultimate aim of this atrocious campaign is to establish an extremist caliphate in our region. Dear Kenyans, a time has come for each and every one of us to decide and choose. Are you on the side of an open, free, democratic Kenya which respects the rule of law, sanctity of life, and freedom of worship? Or do you stand with the repressive, intolerant, and murderous extremists? Dear Kenyans, terrorism and violent crime are a grave threat to our nation. We are in a war against terrorists in and outside our country. With the aid of sympathizers, supporters, and collaborators among our communities, terrorists have retaliated viciously to deter us from our determined, effective, and successful effort to rid the Horn of Africa of terrorism and violent extremism. We will not flinch or relent in the war against terrorism in our country and our region. We shall continue to inflict painful casualties on these terrorists until we secure our country and region. Our stability and prosperity depends on a secure neighborhood, and this is our commitment. We ask every Kenyan to take a principled stand against the evil of terror and to support this war. We are in this together. Innocent Kenyan lives have been lost in a most harrowing manner to these animals. Too many lives, too painfully snuffed out. Again, I extend condolences to the families of all Kenyans who have lost their lives in the hands of terrorists. My government continues to extend support to you, and we pray that God gives you his divine solace and comforts each of you in this painful moment.